Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stacklehouse, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse, and this is episode 72. In today's episode, I'm continuing the What Does Tami Do questions with a question a client asked me a couple of weeks ago. She asked, do I follow a particular protocol to manage my fibromyalgia, or do I continually keep trying new things, just tweaking as I go? And you'll notice in episode 70, I did talk about what I'm doing right now, which is part of where the question came from. Is this something I've been doing forever, or how did it evolve? And as part of that discussion, the key question in there is, how do I know if this is working? How do I know if I'm trying something that's actually making a difference? Which is why today's episode is your fibromyalgia treatment working? So I'm going to give you some information on what it is that I do, how I know if something's working, and a few of the things that people usually do wrong as they're trying new things and trying to figure out ways they can improve their fibromyalgia. So back in the beginning, when I was first diagnosed, I probably saw my doctor every 3 weeks. It was crazy. I was there all the freaking time. We tried lots of new things, and about every 3 weeks, I was going back to report how something worked or didn't work. And often, even in just 3 weeks' time, she was giving me yet another thing to try, medication, supplement, whatever. So at the beginning, while we were trying to figure out what worked for me, we were trying lots of new things continually. Now, every time we found something that seemed to be working, we kept it and we would keep tweaking. We were never really looking for one dramatic magic bullet. You've probably heard me say on this podcast many times that there is no single thing you are going to be able to do to manage your fibromyalgia completely. In fact, there was a study put out from Italy, I believe, that basically said that there is no one medication, no one thing that is going to completely manage fibromyalgia. So you have to take little pieces here and there and put it all together to create your own perfect jigsaw puzzle. So every time we found something that worked, we kept it. And we kept looking for more puzzle pieces. Occasionally, we would keep trying something new. Now, I was diagnosed way back in 2007, so it has been a 15-year journey finding those little bits and pieces and tweaking things to get my fibromyalgia into remission. Now, you can go back to episode 70 and you can hear all of the things that I do now and all of the things that I tried. So to answer my client's question, right now, yes, I basically do follow a particular protocol that I outlined for you in episode 70. All the 20 plus supplements I take, the handful of medications I take, and the way that I manage my fibromyalgia. But that doesn't mean that I'm not always trying to get better. Yes, my fibromyalgia is in remission, but I think every single one of us can find ways to feel even better yet. So I am always looking for new things. Also, as podcast host, as an author, as an instructor, as a fibromyalgia coach, I am also always looking for new things for my clients. Just because I've got my fibromyalgia dialed in doesn't mean that my clients aren't going to need something else. Also, I want to make sure I'm educating my students in all of the possible options so that they can help their clients with new things. So I am always experimenting and trying new things, which sometimes is tricky. It's hard for me to try treatments for fibromyalgia pain when I don't have any fibromyalgia pain, right? Like I can tell you what my experience was, but I can't tell you how it worked on pain because I don't have pain anymore. So I am always trying new things, but with that little asterisk there, right? Which of course leads us to the question, well, how do you know if it's working? When you try something new, how do you know? And I will say that in essence, what I do is I basically follow the scientific method. So, being someone who loves math and science, I always think in terms of I'm running an experiment. What is the observation I'm making? What is the thing that I'm noticing? What's the question that I have about what I've noticed? What's the hypothesis, the guess that I have for what might change if I try a particular thing? And then I do the experiment and I gather the data. And once I've done that, I analyze the data, draw my conclusions, and take action on the information. It's the exact same thing that I do with my clients. So, to break that down for you, if you go out and you do a search for the scientific method, you're going to see a lot of models that are basically similar. And what I just outlined was observation, question, hypothesis, experiment and gather data, make your analysis, draw your conclusions, and then take action. And of course, repeat. After you take action, then you make a new observation. So, what does that look like in real life? First and foremost, that experiment and gather data stage, you have to track what is happening. Your brain is for sure 100% going to lie to you about whether something is working or not. If you simply rely on your memory, you're not going to be able to remember correctly, even if you didn't have fibro brain, right? But then we got that on top of it. So it's like a double whammy. Like, do not trust your memory. Track how you're feeling. If you go to today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/72, there will be a place where you can sign up to grab all of my worksheets. This symptom log is one of them. So download the symptom tracking log and just every day jot down your pain levels and your fatigue levels. And yes, I do mean every single day, jot it down. Your brain will lie to you. I mean, seriously, can you remember what you had for lunch last Thursday? Maybe, probably not. So let's go ahead and just write it down every day so that your brain can't lie. This is one of the reasons I love numbers. I love math. Math does not lie to you. So if you jot down those numbers every day, you're going to be able to see a trend. You're going to be able to see over time, is your pain level going up? Is your pain level going down? Do you have more energy or are you more tired? And you notice I say over time, we are looking at an overall trend. I'm not asking you to try something today and experience a dramatic shift tomorrow. It's probably try something today and tomorrow and for the next few months. And in 6 months, we're going to know how that worked for you, which we will get to in a little bit later. But that's one of the mistakes most people make is stopping too soon. So every day, jot down your pain, jot down your fatigue, use that symptom tracking log so your brain doesn't lie to you. If you are working with one of our fibromyalgia coaches, another tool we will use is the Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire. This is a professional tool that we use to track your fibromyalgia symptoms, how difficult it is for you to do certain tasks, what your symptoms levels are for several different kinds of things, how your emotional state is. And that will give us a score that we can then use to see whether or not you're improving. This is the score that you'll hear me using with our graduates in our Stories of Hope and Healing episodes. Another thing that I use personally to track my improvement is my number of steps. If you've got a Fitbit, if you carry your phone around, it's going to be tracking your steps. If you've got an Apple Watch, looking at your number of steps can be a great way to see how you're doing. It can be a great energy management tool. In fact, there's an episode called My Favorite Energy Management Tool. I'll have a link to it in today's show notes. But that tells you how you can use a pedometer, use a step tracker to better manage your energy. But if you're not actively using it to manage your energy, you can kind of glance at your steps. And the more steps you do just naturally, chances are the better you feel because you feel like doing more, right? Like you get up and you go get that drink of water yourself instead of asking your husband to bring you a glass of water next time he comes back from the kitchen, right? So the more you're naturally doing, the better you naturally feel. So this is one of the things that I often will use. If you have an Apple Watch, you can also be looking at, your stand goal, your move goal, your exercise goal, and just see the natural trend. Are you doing more or are you doing less? Typically, if we don't feel as good, we're naturally going to be doing less. So that can give us a basic trend. Now, this is the key way that you are going to know if something is working is simply to track it. Use that scientific method, gather your data, run the experiment and gather your data. Now, let's talk about the things that people do wrong, because obviously if it was that simple, you probably wouldn't be having the question, is this working or not? So I'm going to give you the top 4 things that people do wrong when they are trying new treatment options and they're wondering, is my fibro treatment actually working? Or even thinking my fibro treatment isn't working. These are the 4 things people do wrong. Number 1, they don't give enough time for whatever it is they're trying to actually work. I see this over and over and over again. I see it with clients. I see it with other fibro patients. I even see it in friends and family who don't have fibromyalgia. You will take a particular supplement at night, wake up the next morning and say, wow, that was amazing. It totally worked. Take it another night, wake up the next morning and say, well, it didn't do anything. This doesn't work at all, and then throw it away. So make sure that you are being realistic for how long something is going to take before you see results, right? It's like trying to lose weight or get into better shape, right? You can't just go exercise once and poof, you're magically in shape. It doesn't work that way. You also can't just do something once and expect that that's it for the rest of your life, right? It's like doing the dishes or doing laundry, right? Like it's never ending. It's something you have to continually do. So make sure that you give things long enough to work. Let me give you a couple of examples and why this is not necessarily an easy thing to just give you a straight guideline for. If you are trying something like low-dose naltrexone, can be amazing for fibromyalgia, but you've got to try it for at least 6 months before you really know if it's working or not. I have talked to so many people who have tried LDN, but they maybe tried it for a few weeks or even a couple of months and then quit because they didn't see a difference. Well, you're not going to. In just a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, you are not going to see a difference. This is the kind of thing that takes longer to work in your body. It's actually working on inflammation in your body, inflammation in your brain. If you go back and listen to episode 21 with Dr. Jared Younger, he actually talks specifically about low-dose naltrexone and why we need to try it for at least 6 months before we know if it's working. So that's one example. To give you another example, clear on the other end of things, if somebody is trying something like D-ribose, you can pretty much know within a few days or a couple of weeks, definitely by the end of your first bottle, you know if that is making a difference for you or not. So there are some things you can know right away, and there are other things that it takes time. So I can't give you just one general X number of days, do this, and you'll know if it works. We've got to follow it. We've got to follow it over time. And you need to have realistic expectations for the thing that you are actually trying. Now, how do you get that realistic expectation if you're trying something new? You can do things like research online, see how long it takes. You can Google that. If you're working with a coach, that's something we can absolutely help you with. If your doctor has prescribed a new medication, that's a great question to ask them, or even ask your pharmacist. How long should it take before I see this making a difference? So that is number one. People do not give things long enough. I see that so often. Make sure you are trying things for a long enough period of time that you actually have a real answer. The number two thing that people do wrong is they discard small improvements. What do I mean by that? What I mean is people are often looking for something to make a big difference. And if something doesn't make a big difference, then they think it's worthless. But let me tell you, small differences added up over time with other small differences can get you just as far, maybe even farther. I will tell you, there have been very few major things that have improved my fibromyalgia. It has been little bits and pieces here and there. To get to 100% better, you can get there with 4 things that do 25%, or you can get there with 50 things that do 2%. The math is the same number, right? We work that math out, we still get to 100, right? So don't be afraid to take that 2% improvement, take that 3 or 4% improvement, and try a bunch of different things. You'll notice in episode 70, when I walk through all the supplements I take, there's over 20 of them. Obviously, it didn't take 4 things at 25%. It took 20 things, right? And so if you divide that out, they've got 20 things. They're probably doing about 5% a piece to get me to 100% better. So don't be afraid to keep those little tiny improvements and put together your perfect jigsaw puzzle, your perfect tapestry of combination of things to get to where you want to be. So, mistake number 2 is discarding those small improvements. You want to keep every tiny little bit better that you can get. The number 3 mistake that people make when they're figuring out their treatment plan for fibromyalgia is that they quit doing the things that work. Now, you're going to hear me say that, and I know you're thinking, why would anybody quit doing what worked? But I promise you, you've done it. Right? This goes back to what I was just talking about, where you try something, it works a little bit, and you stop doing it because it's not enough. Or you try doing something, it works, you're taking that particular supplement for a couple of years, you figure I've taken it long enough, you stop doing it. But you don't stop doing it in a way where you're following that scientific method, where you're asking the question, if I stop taking this, will I feel better or will I feel worse? So anytime you make a change, make sure you're following that scientific method, that you're asking that question, you are forming your hypothesis, you're experimenting, you're gathering that data, you analyze the data, and then draw your conclusion and take action. So if you stop doing something, you want to track that just as much as if you start doing something, because you may quit doing something that works. And next thing you know, 6 months down the road, you're not feeling as good and you're not sure why. Number 4, the 4th thing people do wrong is that they stop looking for more improvements. There are so many things that can be done to improve fibromyalgia. I've told you the things that I do, But there's so many things I know about that I'm not doing and don't need to do or didn't work for me that work for my clients, work for my coaches, my students. So keep looking for more improvements. This goes back to what I was saying before about grab every tiny little bit, and that every one of us can find ways to feel just a little bit better every day, just a little bit better. So keep looking for more improvements. Keep trying new things. Now, those are the 4 that I wrote down. But as I've been talking to you, there have been a couple more things that have popped into my head. And I'm like, why didn't I write that down? So I'm going to give you a bonus couple of things here. So, number 5, when you are tracking what you're doing, when you're thinking about improving your fibromyalgia, when you're thinking about improving your symptoms, think outside what you know. So, how do you do that? Well, you find somebody who knows more than you. If you are left to your own devices, are only going to be able to come up with ideas that you know, right? So, you need to get more information. That may mean doing research online. That may mean reading books, listening to podcasts. It may mean hiring a coach or getting a new doctor that knows a different particular area of medicine. Always be looking for more. And as we're doing this, again, remember, track, track, track. The key with tracking and knowing how to analyze that data and to come to valuable conclusions is to not do too many things at once. So this is going to be my bonus number 6, is make one change at a time. If you have 3 new things that you try and you have a bad result, right? Like, oh, my stomach just can't handle this. Well, how do you know which of those 3 was the problem? Or you try 3 new things and you feel dramatically better 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road. You're not sure if you actually need all of them, right? Maybe it was only one of those 3 things that made a big difference, and the other 2 aren't doing anything at all. So we always want to make one change at a time, track it for a little while, and then try the next thing. Now, I know that some of these guidelines kind of conflict with each other a little bit, right? So if I tell you only make one change at a time, but then I tell you, some things it's going to be 6 months before you notice a difference. Well, does that mean I can only ever try 2 things in a year? That is not what I'm saying, but I understand how it could sound that way. So I want to clarify for you. When we are doing one thing at a time, at first, what we're looking for is negative side effects. And we typically see those pretty quickly, right? Like if you take a supplement to help you with energy and all of a sudden you can't sleep, then we know maybe that's not the right choice for you, right? And we're going to know that probably pretty quickly. If we're taking something for energy and we don't notice anything, then don't give up too quick. That's where we want to make it last longer. This is also where we want to double check with the experts, your coach, your doctor, to find out how long you should expect before you notice something. And so when we try one thing at a time, usually I have people try something for a week, just watching for anything negative more than anything else. And then we add in another thing, and then we add in another thing. And on your tracking, you are making notes of when you started what. So if you're tracking your pain every day, you're tracking your fatigue every day, also make a note on there. I started my D-ribose on the 5th. I started LDN on June 2nd, whatever it is. Keep track of that and then go back and analyze the data. I do also want to mention that analyzing the data, looking for patterns, drawing those conclusions, sometimes it takes a certain amount of experience to be able to see what they see, right? Like take an X-ray, for example. A radiologist is going to look at an x ray and see something different than you and I see looking at that x ray because of their experience. So, if you're doing your tracking and you're looking at that symptom tracking log and your notes about when you started taking what, and it's just all Greek to you, it's like looking at an x ray and you're like, yeah, there's bones, right? It's like, yeah, there's pain, there's fatigue, but I don't know what conclusions to draw from this. That's where it can be super, super helpful to work with somebody whose business it is to analyze this information. Obviously, working with a coach can be helpful. That's part of what we do. Taking your symptom tracking log to your doctor can be really helpful. They can help you with that. If you're talking about particular medications, your pharmacist can also be really helpful. You might not realize it, but your pharmacist went to school just as long as your doctor did, only all they did was study drugs. So they know a lot more about the medication side of things, probably than even your doctor does. So those can be things to have a consultation with your pharmacist, with your doctor, with a coach, and have us kind of help you decipher that data to analyze and come to those conclusions because we know what we're looking at and we know how to see it. So, to go back to the beginning, the questions: do I follow one particular protocol or do I keep trying new things? And then, how do I know if my treatments are working? Just to summarize for you, right now, I basically do follow one particular protocol, but yes, I am still continually tweaking new things. I recently even asked my doctor, hey, I'm taking all these supplements. Should I still be doing that? Should we start cutting some of them out? And she's like, hey, how are you feeling? I'm like, I feel great. She said, why would we change anything? So it is totally okay to go with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it philosophy on some of these things. A lot of times there is no reason why you can't keep taking it and every reason why you should, right? If your body, for whatever reason, doesn't make XYZ properly and you can take it as a supplement, why wouldn't you, right? It's easy to fix. Let's do it. And then, as far as how do you know if your treatments are working? The simple answer is track it. You've got to collect the data. If we don't have the data, we don't know. Your brain will lie to you. All right. So that's it for today. I'm going to wrap this up with our listener shout out. And before that, a quick reminder, it is almost trick or treat season for those of you who celebrate Halloween and treat the trick or treaters. Don't forget about the Teal Pumpkin Project. This is a great project that developed out of the food allergy world. They were looking for ways that kids could trick or treat safely and not end up with candy with foods that they can't eat. Think of kids who have peanut allergies, gluten allergies, diabetics, things like that. We want them to still be able to have the fun and the joy, but to do it safely. If you want to learn more, just go to tealpumpkinproject.org. We'll have a link in today's show notes, and you can learn more about that. It really is as simple as it sounds. You put a teal-colored pumpkin on your porch, and you simply have non-food options for the kids who are coming to trick or treat. My parents use things like stickers, fun erasers, cute pencils, little fidget spinners. There's all kinds of things that you can use for treats that are not food. And those of you out there who are wishing that your kids didn't come home with a bag full of candy that you're going to eat half of, right? This is also something that you can watch for to go to those houses that have non-food options, a little bit healthier. So remember your teal pumpkin. And then today's shout out actually goes to Greta in Sweden. She says, I found your podcast the other day, and I have to say I am so grateful. I love it. And I've also got to say, I really love your voice. Thank you, Greta. She goes on to say, I've gone through the multimodal rehabilitation program provided here in Sweden, and it was really good, eye-opening and all. but to maintain all the routines and stay on track has been the hardest part for me. I digress, but what I really wanted to say is thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. It means a lot just to be understood. So thank you again, Greta. As you know, I emailed you, but to let everybody else know, what you mentioned in your message to me about maintaining all the routines and doing all the things that you need to do to stay on track, that really is the hardest part. And that is where having an accountability buddy, working with a coach can be so, so helpful. I've said many times, and I will continue to say, the secret to my success is literally being a coach, because every day I am doing things like recording this podcast episode for you, and it reminds me and helps me stay on track. If I wasn't doing this, if I wasn't so focused on what I have to do every day, it would be so easy to not do it. So make sure that you structure your life so that you get the support and the accountability that you need. Sometimes it's simple tricks and tips we can teach you to help you maintain those routines and stay on track. Sometimes it's just the support of having somebody that you know you're going to have to, confess to. Sometimes it's also just new ideas of, okay, how do I fit a walk into my everyday life, and having somebody to bounce those other ideas off of. So thank you again, Greta, for sending this in. And yes, those routines, staying on track is the hardest part, but there's lots that can be done to help you and support you with that too. All right, everyone, I will see you back here in 2 weeks, where I'm going to keep answering some of these What Does Tami Do emails that have come in. It's been fun for me to give you sort of a behind the scenes look into what I do and how I think. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.